I wrote the book because I kind of had to write the book. I was trying to write a different book, but I kept writing little vignettes about Paul instead. And then once I had a lot of them, I said, let me see if I can make this into a good book and just let people know that he was a person. Adam Lanza, who did that awful thing in Connecticut, he was a person, and he had a mother, and he had a father, and their marriage broke up. Who knows? It might have had something to do with how crazy he was, but she was doing her best to take care of him, and the medical establishment failed them. And Paul never did anything horrible, thank God. But, you know, it wasn't because the medical establishment was doing such a great job with him. For the most part, they kept falling down on the job. They're just mentally ill, and you know, if your pancreas doesn't work, you have diabetes and you need to take insulin. If your brain doesn't work, you need to be somewhere where you can't hurt people. You need to be in some sort of a facility, a long-term care facility, where people can make sure you take your medicine and where you are not allowed to hurt people. The reason my brother used to tell people he'd been shot in the head, one of the reasons, is because people are nicer to you if your strange behavior is because you were shot in the head as opposed to because you have mental illness. Mental illness, they run the other way. You know, a bad brain injury like the poor guys coming back from Iraq, and we all feel great sympathy and say, oh, poor you, you know, we got to do something to help you. But we're not doing much to help people with mental illness. We just try to ignore them. But between 18 and 62, you're on your own. Medicaid cannot be used to help fund the care of someone who's in a long-term care facility for a reason of mental disease. Consequently, there are no long-term care facilities. So that would be a huge, huge improvement in the care of people with serious mental illness. If there were long-term care facilities where someone could go and become stabilized and really spend several months getting good care. Actually, my father, he just sort of never recovered. He just, you know, the doctors back in the 70s and 80s, they just said, you know, there's no hope for him. You just should forget about him, and you have other children. But he couldn't forget his son, so he just became very depressed himself. And because my parents were so concerned with that, you know, some of the younger children who were still at home, they just sort of felt kind of abandoned. And, you know, it's definitely very hard on people. And my mother, almost every Sunday for the next 20 years, she drove up to wherever Paul was, at whatever mental hospital, and she visited him and let him know we still cared about him. With a group of us, he would be Paul, our brother, and he just was himself. Other times, you know, he'd say that he was working undercover in the mental hospital for the FBI. Now, did he really think that? I guess he did. Or he'd say he was Clint Eastwood and he had been in this movie, and boy, you know, long days at the movie set, you know, rehearsing for this movie. And he had long stories about that sort of thing. So I don't know who he thought he was. It changed by the moment. Stevie Wonder was his favorite singer. And there's some Stevie Wonder song where he talks about how you need people. And I can't remember what the lyric is right now. But he said, you know, no one's ever needed me. And he said, but don't worry, Kathy, lots of people need you. I need you. So I think he'd like to feel needed.